Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
Okay, here we are. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We have me. I am Wendy and Beth and Minnie, and
Hi.
together we make up Fruitloops. And this is our video club episode. And the video we watched was a documentary called Crack, Cocaine, Corruption, and Conspiracy.
Yes.
It is a 2021 documentary film. It was a Netflix original. So they had pulled out all the stops. Directed by Stanley Nelson, and it focuses on the emergence and the effects in the 1980s crack epidemic in the United States, which resulted in negative effects. That seems like there should be a harsher word for that on America's inner city. And it came out in January of 2011. And I just wanted to say, I watched it when it came out because this was during the pandemic. Yeah. And I'm certain I shouted it out as a shout out recommendation.
Okay.
So I will be curious to see if any fruities consumed it then or now and what they think if they are not joining us on this video call. But what did you guys think? Any opening thoughts?
It was really good.
Yeah.
It was a really good documentary. Sad, very sad.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That part where the little boy was like, please don't take my mother away.
Because
they play it in the trailer. They play it in the beginning of the video and then they show you the scene and it, oh my God.
Yeah.
Heartbreaking.
Really
Yeah.
Well, the first place I went to after watching it was the reviews. I wanted to see what other people had to say.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I saw some of those. Tell me you're racist without telling me you're racist.
Seriously, they were like, what did they say? It wasn't Reagan or the cops or systemic racism that made us afraid and kept our streets dirty. It was greed and a ghetto mentality. Another one was,
oh my God,
this documentary was a hit piece on Reagan. No, it really wasn't.
It was just the truth.
I lived through all of that.
Yeah,
I remember
it's all
of
true.
That. And it is all true. Yeah, and I remember. So when Ronald Reagan got elected, I think I was 12 or something like that, and I remember my mom like sobbing uncontrollably, and I didn't understand it at the time. Like why having a certain person be elected president would make her so upset. And I didn't completely understand it until Trump got elected. And then I was the one who was like, I can't believe this is happening, you know?
Yeah.
And she said, I remember her saying something at the time that this was going to change everything and forever. And, you know, he was going to do terrible things and all of that. And she was right.
Was 100% right. That's so wild because I just want to read one more review.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Another documentary that makes addicts out to be victims who have no choice or responsibility for their actions. Anyway, these reviews, there was lots
terrible.
Of them. Those are just a few.
There were, I've looked at the reviews too. I didn't write them down, but there was a lot of them about how this is false history and
slander,
blah, blah, blah.
Agenda with a capital A.
Yeah.
just crazy stuff. But I too really, really enjoyed the documentary. So we talked about Reagan. That's kind of where they started it after we saw the clips of users and dealers and former addicts either on the street, like actual archival footage. And then there was interviews with them where they were talking about kind of how it first started and how they felt. And then I also want to comment on the soundtrack because it's entirely a hip hop soundtrack.
So good.
And and what I think is important to note is, especially hip hop at the time was telling the story of what exactly was going on. And people are just like, this music is so great. But
I didn't understand that at the time either.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to have an appreciation for it. I think 2020 in vision terms, not the
Right,
year,
right.
is hindsight. But it all made total sense. It was a perfect backdrop for this documentary. So the first hip hop tune is Public Enemy rocking in the background. And they show us that there's some white guy, I can't remember what his name was, but he was like, drugs were blamed for all the issues in society that society allowed to fester and were afraid to confront. And then we cut to the Republican National Convention. I had to pause it for a second and just stop and look. What is it about Ronald Reagan that has people so like, they have such a hard on for him in that time? But
it's like Trump. The same with Trump. I don't get, or Hitler.
Yeah.
Why? I don't get it.
But I don't see it. But the historian did make a really important comment about how he seemed to really speak to the people who felt left behind, specifically the white people who felt left behind.
Definitely the white people.
Yeah.
Say goodbye to your credit card rewards. Big box retailers, led by Walmart and Target, are pushing for a bill in Congress to take away your hard-earned cash back and travel points to line their pockets. Senate Bill 1838 would enact harmful credit card routing mandates that would end credit card rewards as we know it. If you love your credit card rewards, visit handsoffmyrewards.com and tell them to oppose credit card routing legislation paid for by the Electronic Payments Coalition.
This episode is brought to you by Pete's. Few things start your day better than a good coffee. That's why Pete's hand roast their coffee from a specific selection of high-quality beans. And they don't just put those beans into anyone's hands. Pete's trains their roasters for 10,000 hours so they can master the roast that gives you the most. Pete's Coffee. Coffee for coffee people. Find Pete's online or at your local retailer.
But the 80s was an interesting time, and everybody comments about it, how, there's Wall Street, and all of a sudden there's this influx of money. And we should note that the year before 1980 was the 70s. And there's one year in the 70s that was the deadliest year on record in the city of New York. So there was a lot of crime. And I think people thought, Ronald Reagan will help us.
He's going to fix it.
Yeah. But so quickly that all turned around. This Make America Great Again turned into Make America a pile of doo-doo. And unemployment went through the roof. And there is the neuroscientist, his name is Dr. Hart, and I'm very familiar with his work. He wrote a book a little while ago, but he is a really strong advocate for the decriminalization of drugs in general. And he actually studies drugs. So I was glad that they included him in the doc. Anyway, the economy was stimulated. People were going out dancing again. And cocaine was this like elite, fancy schmancy drug that people use to have fun. And they were interviewing people who were like, I've used it a couple times. And this one guy was like, I couldn't wait to graduate from college and start making money so I could just buy it and be a part of that lifestyle. And, they had that clip of, I don't know if that was the first Wolf of Wall Street, but that wasn't later.
Wall Street. It was.
Is that what it was?
Yeah,
called?
it was Martin Sheen, wasn't it?
No,
yeah, I think so.
No.
Wasn't it? I don't know.
Michael Douglas.
Yeah, I get them mixed up for some
they look
reason.
similar.
Yeah. And he was like, greed is good, and his hair all slicked back. And, one guy said it felt like the city was coming back. And there was addicts describing the drug. It was a glitzy drug. You could stay up all night and have fun. And then they cut to Scarface, and that movie helped make the drug even more popular. And one of the former dealers, her name is Mac Mama Williams, was like, "This is if you got this means that you have money. People with money get this drug." And another historian, they had a lot of historians. There's hip hop historians, cultural historians.
They were all really interesting. Yeah,
they were. Coey Rodriguez was my favorite one. He's a snack. Anyway, he said cocaine was too expensive for people who were BIPOC and people who were poor in the inner city. And they talked about how with the Reagan administration, there was this proliferation of wealth for only a few people at the expense of the many. So then cut to 1982, he's cutting welfare. He's cutting school lunch for the kids. He's taking the solar panels off the White House that Jimmy Carter put on. Just cut.
Just being a dickhead.
It's so now, like, to look back on the damage that he did, it makes me so mad. I had the privilege, I would say, of going to the Jimmy Carter Library, the museum. And the solar panels, the humanitarian aid, the mental health initiatives that he was doing for the country, the
he really cared.
Economic, for people who
Yeah.
really needed it. And as soon as Ronald Reagan came in, he just took all of that off.
Yeah.
And he should be ashamed of himself.
He should.
So he eliminates a bunch of stuff. Unemployment goes super duper high. And then they cut to the next cool hip hop song by Grandmaster Flash, talking about broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the street. It's like they just don't care. Can't take the smell. Can't take the noise. Got no money to move out. I guess I got no choice. Anyway, so that was cool. And then there was this dude. His name is Samson, but I've referred to him in my notes as dude.
The dude abides.
There's people who are on the other side of the whole. There's a whole economy for crack at the time. So
was it Samson Styles?
Yes,
the black
former
guy?
dealer. Yes.
Okay.
He talked about how he didn't have money, and then all of a sudden, with the sale of crack, he did have money. There was a former homicide detective who talked about during this time he was a child and all the things that he had to do to survive, including stealing from people. Stealing from the store, stealing, say, hey, ma'am, can I help you with your groceries? And, run away with a bag or two. One former dealer was talking about before he started dealing, the poverty that he experienced and described having holes in his shoes and being so embarrassed during picture day that he would cover his shoes with hands. And there's an activist, I forgot his name, but he talked about nobody really understands how traumatic poverty can be.
Yeah.
And that when you are in poverty and you have an opportunity to escape it, you will do anything you can to take it. And so when you're broke and oppressed and something comes along to change that for you, you're going to take it, even if it is crack cocaine. So from 1982 to 1984, cocaine starts entering the United States by 50%. What happened? Then the price of cocaine started to fall, and Ronald Reagan goes on TV and he's like, 4 to 5 million people use this drug regularly. And they were talking about how you can't even get one Cuban cigar across the border, but a gazillion pounds of cocaine get through no problem. What is this? So they're implying that there's no way that this is just coming from people in the inner city. This is bigger than this. And I'm really glad that they kind of zoomed out at some point during the documentary and talked about that graphic of the three countries, the United States, Iran, and Nicaragua, and what was moving from country to country. So the United States was selling, basically, I think Congress was like, Ronald Reagan, you need to stop asking us for money for whatever nonsense you were trying to combat in Nicaragua. It's a little country in Central America. It's not that big of a deal. But Reagan, I think, was trying to fight communism. And you guys stop me if I'm wrong, because I don't remember this point.
No, you're not wrong.
Yeah, they were talking about Marxism specifically at the time.
And by the way, what's the problem with Marxism? Doesn't everybody get what they need with Marxism?
Am I wrong? Different politics. I don't know.
Okay.
Well, it turns into fascism is the problem.
Yeah. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Well, I think
at least that's been our experience with other nations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why communism, America has been so against it, but they were, and it was in Nicaragua. And
they were terrified of communism coming to this country. Yeah.
So at first, the United States Congress was supporting efforts to combat communism in Central America, and then they stopped. And Ronald Reagan was like, well, how am I going to fund my bullshit? So he starts selling, he starts selling weapons to people in Iran. Then the money from the weapons goes back to the United States, and somehow the planes are also, okay, I wrote a diagram. Hang on. Okay, so the Iran-Contra scandal is complicated.
It is complicated, and I didn't fully understand it at the time. I remember the hearings.
Okay. You watched them?
I don't know if I sat down and watched them, but I would see highlights. As Oliver North, wasn't it? Or was that something else? Do you remember, Minnie?
Yeah, Oliver North.
Oliver North.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know who that is, but so
well, he was in the Iran-Contra scandal. He was part of it.
Okay. So basically, the Iran-Contra scandal, weapons went to Iran. money went to the United States, drugs came in from Nicaragua, and then the drugs came to the United States, and then they got funneled into the inner cities.
Right.
And that whole cycle funded whatever fuckery Reagan was trying to pull off. Side note, it didn't work and, helped destabilize Central America. And now we have an issue with people seeking asylum at our border today. But we cut to one famous drug dealer who you hear about him a lot in rap songs, Freeway Rick Ross. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the show. What show is that? With Franklin Snowfall on FX.
Oh, I know of it, but I haven't watched it yet. Is
so
it about
good.
him?
So the main character is based on Freeway Rick Ross, who started, he got a lot of his supply from Nicaragua, but he realized, and he talks about this in the documentary, people used to like freebase and make crack on their own, but it was like a complicated process.
Inconvenient.
Yeah. And so now here comes the dealer. Greg offers his customer service. He'll break it down for you and sell it to you in the form that you desire to smoke it. Yes. And so he realized that you could make a lot of money doing this. He made a lot of money in Los Angeles, and then there were some big players on the East Coast. And now with cocaine being cheaper, crack was also cheaper, and people who were really poor had access to cocaine in a way that they had not before.
Right.
And couple that with the despair, the unemployment, the lack of resources. I mean, what else do you expect people to do?
Yeah.
And they said in the documentary that it all happened really, really fast. About the CIA nonsense, I never knew this before watching this documentary, but the head of the CIA actually went to a high school in Watts to speak to the community and give them a chance to air their grievances at the CIA. And they were like, how could you do this? Like, one woman said, why did you do this to our community? How did you allow all this to come in? And he was like, how dare you guys accuse the CIA of doing this? We didn't do. You guys are just big bad complainers, and didn't take any accountability. But then I guess after that meeting, the CIA did do an investigation. It was like, oh, we did do all
We
that
did
stuff.
have something to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they also talk about like what happened to the community during the crack epidemic. And again, there's no jobs. And there was this campaign. Do you guys remember the McDonald's campaign?
I didn't remember it, but I know you've talked about it before.
Yeah.
So when that came on, I was like, oh, that's that commercial Wendy always talks about.
Yeah. and they were like, oh, and there was this, they just showed one commercial, but it was a whole like years long campaign.
Yeah.
Calvin, he used to be like this disrespectful young guy on the street, but he gets a job at McDonald's
And
all of a sudden
Turns into a
money.
good kid.
Oh yeah, he's respectful. And then cut to one of the dealers who's like, I worked at McDonald's. They paid minimum wage and it wasn't shit. So fuck you, Calvin.
Yeah, that was funny. Fuck you, Calvin.
Yeah. What else? So they talked about how fast the drug could come into your hands and sell it. One guy described being able to sell 100 vials in 20 to 30 minutes.
Holy cow. And it was white people who were using too.
Yeah. This was another one of the negative reviews, is the statistic went by kind of fast, but they said 2/3 of crack cocaine users in the United States were white.
Right.
In Los Angeles, there were a bunch of Black people convicted of federal crack cocaine crimes. But in Los Angeles alone, not one white person was convicted.
I thought they said the whole country.
They didn't. I had to rewind that.
Okay,
and that's why I said it went by
so
fast.
It was Los Angeles County.
Yeah, and you could totally be misled by that stat. Yeah, and be angry. I get like, oh, this is very one-sided. But it's just one part of the United States.
I would guess that more Black people were arrested for crack than
oh yeah,
people.
for sure.
Yeah.
So
100%.
I have an admission to make in that my whole life until fairly recently thought that rock cocaine and crack were two different things. I didn't know it was crack though, because in the social group I was in, I don't know if this is common, but they were calling it rock cocaine. And it's okay. But
yeah, still on my list of things to do, ladies.
So addiction is a complicated thing. And during different phases of your life, or, depending on the trauma that you have or what else is affecting you, something might be addictive to one person and not to another. And that's not the fault of the person. That's just kind of how things happen, So that was interesting because I was fascinated by the chemical process. And and I thought the freebase thing was interesting. And then rock, which I thought was just, a different stage of which it is, I guess, freebasing. But I didn't know that that's what they called crack.
And it was the 80s.
So it was the
80s. everybody was doing it. The documentary is accurate. Everybody was doing it. It was like, so it wasn't like something that we worried about a whole lot.
Yeah, there's even that song, White Lines.
Yeah.
Blow away. Oh yeah, blow away. Yeah. Something like a phenomenon, baby.
I have so much to learn and get but back to
back to
one quick. The documentary is broken up into chapters. So cut to chapter 3. The historian Coey talks about how crack cocaine was different compared to like heroin and meth. Like you had to be like in the mob, have these established connections, established like crime businesses in order to have access to be able to engage in selling those drugs. And with crack, you really could start a whole business with a little bit of capital to start with and be taken off making a lot of money right away.
We are gathered here today to give you permission to plan the wedding that you want.
I'm Jessica Bishop.
And I'm Sari Wienerman.
And we're the hosts of the Bouquet Toss podcast.
Today's couples have to juggle so many things, from family expectations to outdated traditions and what's currently trending.
So to make it easier, we're going deep to figure out why we do weddings the way that we do, so you can decide what to keep and what to toss from your wedding day plans.
You are cordially invited to subscribe to the Bouquet Toss wherever you get your podcasts or at evergreenpodcast.com.
By the power vested in us, we pronounce you free to plan your day your way.
The crime was so brutal it was compared to the Manson murders. Mary and Bill, an Ohio cold case, explores what it takes to bring new attention to an unsolved double homicide and turns up new hope for answers. Listen to Mary and Bill, an Ohio cold case from IdeaStream Public Media, wherever you get your podcasts.
They talked about how there was a lot of money coming in. Everybody involved in the economy of it was young. And then you combine all this money, young people, give them weapons so that they could protect their, businesses.
Assets.
And it's a recipe for disaster. And then prior to all of the deaths and the violence, police were not coming into the neighborhoods. Police looked the other way at the sale of drugs. They were just walking around with their billy clubs, looking the other way, not paying attention, and people weren't getting arrested for this stuff. But then when the murders started to happen, things started to take a turn. Police did not care as much until that officer was killed.
Right.
Do you remember that part of the doc?
Yeah.
I can't remember what his name was, but there had been all these deaths, and Nancy Reagan and her stupid ass don't just say no.
Just say no.
Yeah,
it's that easy? Okay.
Yeah, and that was their response to a public health epidemic and crisis was just tell them to say no.
Yep.
And I've talked about this before on the show. Sometimes you cannot just say no. It's not safe to do so. You could get harmed for rejecting, engaging in this. Your family could get harmed. Like it's really not that simple.
It's not simple. No, she made it into like this very simple thing, and none of it is simple. And we knew at the time how stupid it was.
Yeah. Everyone made fun of her.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Can we talk about the campaigns? Because
oh my God,
there was Clint Eastwood, Pee-wee Herman, Mike Tyson. I can't think of another celebrity, but they were all like, "Don't do crack." And then there was that egg.
This is your brain on drugs. Yeah.
I never understood that commercial.
I learned it from watching you, Dad.
That was an ad?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't remember. Wow. I just always thought eggs are delicious. What do eggs have to do with drugs? I just could not but
it was dumb back
Yeah.
then, and it's dumb now.
Yeah, that's just I mean, if they maybe had talked to a user or an addict, or talked to any mental health professional,
they
knew
everything, and everything was made very simple.
Yeah,
black and white. Yeah, and that's honestly how Republicans think.
I'm really glad you brought that up. The performance of action is really gross to me, and that leads me to another thing. When Papa Bush hired that guy to buy drugs outside the
and then
White
they
House,
arrested him, and
then he goes, "This America is crack cocaine sold right here on the streets of the White House,
right across the street."
And then
they set the whole thing up.
They set it up. Yep. You guys are so sick.
Gross.
Oh my God. So
you guys suck.
Yeah. 0 stars.
Would not recommend.
So we get a little bit more testimonials from former dealers and former addicts. They show footage of more deaths occurring. This also got me, is that the kids in the neighborhoods knew what was happening. Like they interviewed a group of kids, and the kids were like, these people are coming from New Jersey to get drugs.
Yeah.
And
that was kind of sad.
Yeah. And then speaking of the kids, they start talking about crack babies. And it blew me away. That
it was eye-opening.
The notion of a crack baby is a lie based on 23 births. But what they did after that study that should have never been published was horrific.
Yeah.
This basically started criminalizing women.
And just what they're trying to do now.
Exactly.
Abortion. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so easy it seems like it's just really easy for Republicans to do.
Yeah.
And maybe politicians in general, but it seems
blame women for everything.
Blame. Yeah. So there was this one woman who was honest with her doctor. This is why Black people should not tell their doctors the truth.
Yeah.
She told her doctor she was struggling. So she's like, I'm having issues with substance use, and I would like some help. And they said, you're going to jail and you're going to lose your kids. And no help was offered
that
to
was
her
fucked up
at all. And I
just want to punch that doctor in the face.
Yeah. I do too. Speaking of the doctor, there was this nurse.
Oh, the nurse. I want to punch her in the face twice.
Nurse Betty. She starts interviewing Black pregnant women.
Just Black women.
Like looking through their bags, and asking them all these questions about their relationships to substances, and reporting these women to
the police
authorities. Yeah. And so as soon as their babies are born or they're on the delivery room table, they're getting handcuffed and taken away to jail. And I'm also glad the documentary talked about what harm to women in society does to a community. So by having all these mothers removed from the homes, having all these children removed from their mothers because of their kids being born as crack babies. Shut the fuck up, Geraldo. He said, this mother just gave birth yesterday. And until today, she was so high, she didn't even realize she had a child.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I know. And it seems like the media just really
they ate it up. And Geraldo was the worst.
I hate Geraldo. At the time, I didn't realize how bad he was.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I just thought of him as entertaining,
Yeah.
But then he did that Al Capone.
In retrospect.
In retrospect.
You know what? We all learned a valuable lesson about Geraldo. And
we sure did.
He ain't shit. Yeah.
And there's nothing in that stupid vault. And I watched that for hours.
Remember when he was drawing the coordinates when he was in Afghanistan or Iraq, and he was like, hey, here's where we are, drawing it in the dirt. Do you remember that?
God,
giving away where the secret
they
ops
are.
were taking place.
Jesus Christ, what an idiot.
He'll do anything for attention.
Yeah. He really will. Chapter 4 of the documentary is about how the crack epidemic was a virus and how it really did take over the entire country. Old, young, any walk of life. There were white people, there were journalists who was part of the documentary who talked about he got wrapped up into a crack cocaine addiction. And they showed more footage of the devastation. they were talking about how women had a different currency than men did in this crack cocaine economy. So men could steal and beat people up to get money for drugs. Women didn't have that option available to them, or I think the guy threw in a snide, or at least they didn't think they could.
Yeah. I didn't take it as snide.
You didn't?
Personally, no. I thought it was they didn't think that they could do it, but they might have been able to.
I think he meant in a more complicated way, the way society sort of trains women to think of things that they can and can't do.
Right, exactly.
And so he was actually criticizing the society in the way that women are made to think that they can't do certain things.
They can't do the things that men do.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But he might have been snide. I don't know, but that's not the way I took it.
I'm going with that because that sounds way better. So, then they get into the women using their bodies as currency in order to feed their addiction. And meanwhile, still not one mention of services, harm reduction, therapy, anything. Nothing that we see now with the opioid crisis, which has been treated vastly differently than the crack epidemic because of who was afflicted the most, who we saw afflicted. And the sound bites are wild. Like Hillary Clinton and these are super predators.
Yeah.
Can't remember what.
Gosh, she looks so young too.
Yeah.
Well, then we can excuse her for saying something so stupid.
Yeah, I did not like the Clintons back then. I didn't like them. They were very centrist, almost Republican.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, at the time,
but I think they have changed.
I think they've evolved.
Right.
Yeah, and I think one thing that the documentary pointed out was that at the time, not only were white politicians and news media portraying Black urban centers as like this crack, war zone, jungle, wild, zone, Black people within the communities were also suffering, who were having to deal with the violence. Nobody was coming to help them.
And I think they jumped on the bandwagon at first.
Yeah, Black people, Black clergy, the church was like, we need to do something. And the thing they knew to do was ask for more police.
Right.
So we get some really terrible laws that come to pass, or acts or legislation. The first one was Ronald Reagan, I think in 86, maybe 88. I don't know.
Somewhere around there.
But it was some sort of drug act. And then there was the 94 crime bill, written by Joe Byron, by the way, but signed by Clinton. And it basically ramped up policing, gave police lots more resources to, quote unquote, fight the war on drugs, which is really a war on people who are suffering, whose skin is a darker hue.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the documentary, they gave a statistic that there has been several $1 trillion spent on the war on drugs, tons of police added to a bunch of big and small cities. It doesn't matter. Just send more police there.
Yeah.
And not much has really improved.
And the statistics on the incarcerated was staggering. Something like there were 300,000 people in jail.
Now
and then
there's 2 million.
Yeah. It was staggering.
A 700% increase since Ronald Reagan signed that act. So I don't know what to say. I think I'd always heard as a kid, the CIA brought crack into the Black community. But it clearly is true. It's not a conspiracy theory, which, I like it when conspiracy theories are proven right. But it's also really sad because it's all very obvious, especially with this archival footage and the voices of people who were there and experienced it. And I think one of the legislator guys, he's a Black House of Representatives person, and he was like, seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah.
But now that we know that it's not, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you going to do? Yeah. So the way it ended was, it brought me to tears.
Oh.
The guy, I think it's your scientist guy. What's his name?
Carl Hart.
Carl Hart. Yeah. Carl Hart.
Yeah. Dr. Carl Hart.
Yeah. Who is a snack. I agree. But he said there's a proverb. He said, I go into my neighborhood and I say, where are my friends? And it echoes back, where are my friends? And that made me tear up.
Yeah, me too. And I had to rewind it and also listen to an interview about the show because I didn't hear. I was like, who's Echo?
I actually did.
Echo.
I listened to it twice too. I rewinded it and listened to it because it was so affecting.
Yeah, very, very. What is the word? Poignant, profound? I don't know. You guys read books.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. But yeah, that was a that really got me. I wanted to say another silly thing about the anti-crack campaign. The LA Lakers doing a rap.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What was that song the kids that were
Oh.
doing? Your mom is a crack whore?
Yeah, I didn't know.
something.
I had never
like, what?
heard that one.
Your mama smokes crack. And crack is whack. Crack, crack, crack.
I had never heard that before.
Yeah,
That
I
was
hadn't either.
disturbing.
It was like little kids.
Yeah, little
like,
kids singing it. That was
this
really
seems
disturbing.
wrong. Yeah. This seems very wrong. And again, so much money must have gone into those campaigns when we knew, like, alcohol has been around for a long time. People have had problems with alcohol for a long time. And I don't know when that drink responsibly slogan came around, but there's been treatment for this kind of addiction. And it just wasn't treated with the same when we knew better and we didn't do better. And that's embarrassing. And I hate it here.
Wait, you hate it here?
Yeah, you're not going to believe this.
Yeah.
America is like your terrible, abusive parent that you love very much, but you have a lot of notes.
Yeah, and you're not sure if you want a relationship with them anymore.
Right, yeah.
Do you enjoy science, spooky stories, and all things paranormal? We do too.
While we would love for most paranormal stories to be true, we are here to tell you that they probably aren't. But that doesn't make them any less fun to speculate about.
We are the Spooky Science Sisters podcast. In this podcast, we bring you bi-weekly discussions on possible scientific explanations behind the supernatural. Backed up by research articles and other credible sources, we do deep dives into things like archaeology and physics and share in-depth discussions with topic experts.
Visit us at SpookyScienceSisters.com to listen to a couple of skeptics debunk some of your favorite alien encounters, cryptid sightings, and ghost stories with science, sass, and a significant amount of laughter.
Thank you, and stay spooky.
Yeah, I was going to say when we were talking about cocaine earlier and addiction, but I do have a friend who did get addicted to, I guess, effectively crack. And she really spiraled. And
it was wild.
It was, yeah. Because she went from, she had a hard time of it. So that era was very like, they were into tough love and all this sort of thing. And she had struggled with other kinds of addictions. When she was 13 years old, her mom kicked her out of the house, which she's 13 years old. And then she kind of turned to sex work to be able to live. She was 13.
Yeah, a baby.
And I remember asking her at one point, I said, are you upset with your mom? And you know, you were just a child. And she said, well, what else was she going to do? She couldn't control me. I was just going to do whatever the fuck I wanted. And she didn't want to, you know, call the police on me. I'm like, so she kicked you out? She couldn't, you know, take you to therapy or whatever. But it didn't really, you know, like you were saying, it didn't really exist like treatment programs like we have now. They didn't exist. So her mom's solution was to kick her out of the house, you know, instead of getting her treatment. And, you know, I struggled through alcoholism and I felt like I was sort of after my own devices to try to get away from it, even though like our family went through a lot of therapy for many, many years. And that certainly helped. But at the time it was like, you know, the old pull yourself up by your own bootstraps thing, you know, it's like, you're just weak, you know, you need to kick your addiction in the ass. And, you know,
you just need to be like Calvin.
Yeah, be like Calvin. Get a job at McDonald's.
Just say no.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was the attitude of the general public overall and of the time.
And tough love was
tough
big.
Love. Yeah, all
that's
of
a
that,
good,
you know.
It's
like you need to kick your kid's ass in order to get them, you know, under control. And so if it was always like finger pointing, you know, and it was never like maybe this is a problem because we need to give people better resources to be able to recover from these sorts of situations,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I like, but for the grace of God, there go I, things could have gone much worse for me.
I was just going to say, I'm thankful that I'm just lucky that I don't have that addictive component. Yeah.
You said your family also went through like therapy, and I want just like the resources and also the mentality. As far as the documentary goes, they focused a lot on BIPOC communities, and with the unemployment being so high, I can't imagine that there was also resources available
there wasn't
for mental health.
The only reason that we were able to do it is because our parents had the
resources.
Right. And so I just think that I like that this documentary gives us an opportunity to have a conversation about like all this very complex situation and scenario that occurred in the 80s and 90s that still affects people today. Like I was thinking about all of those kids whose moms were taken away, right? On camera.
Like trauma.
I'm wondering.
Where are they now?
Exactly.
Where are they now?
In jail,
whole generations of people. Just traumatized.
And
all forced into it.
Yeah, and all they if somebody had just said, "Hey, would you like some help today?"
Right? Yeah.
Could have gone so different.
And taking all that money that they spent on just putting addicts in
people in jail.
Yeah, spend it on, the
mental
therapy
health
instead. How much cheaper would that have been?
So much.
And how productive people would have been instead of going to jail and being traumatized over again.
Yeah. What else? Any other thoughts on the documentary?
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Minnie for suggesting.
This was a good one.
I stumbled across it because I was trying to find the previous one that we watched, and I tried to find it on Netflix, and it wasn't there. But they're like, "You might like crack instead." Like, I might like crack.
I might like.
How do you know?
It's okay. So I just wanted to say there's a positive end to my story with my friend.
Oh, okay.
So she eventually did get into treatment. So she eventually got off the drug, and she went through the whole program and made amends to her friends. And now she's a social worker.
Oh,
and
wow, I love
she
that.
does really well. Yeah, and she's helping people and living the good life. And so
that's wonderful.
Eventually she did manage to get out of it and actually used what had happened to her to affect positive change.
Help other people.
To help other people.
That's rad.
Yeah.
I think
she's
that
awesome.
is the
I really
goal.
love her.
That's the goal of the documentary, I think, too.
Yes.
On the positive reviews, people were saying, wow, this is a real eye opener.
Yeah.
And, as an opportunity to sort of move the conversation forward on how we fix this. I will also say that as somebody kind of in the recovery space, addiction, the way we talk about it now is different than what I saw in the documentary. Yeah. And so like even the idea of harm reduction, which is different depending on you and your goals, but harm reduction for like heroin addicts is safe needle distribution or safe places where you can use the heroin and have access to Narcan. And so I just think that looking back on the 80s, it seems barbaric the way we treated the disease of addiction. And I think we've come a long way. And I think that overall is good.
Yeah.
It is good.
Any other thoughts, y'all?
Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police.
That's
the sound of the beast.
one.
I had that stuck in my head for days after watching.
I wrote that one down, and then there was Public Enemy.
Yeah,
Public Enemy song. Yeah, the soundtrack was
Public Enemy.
Really good.
Yeah.
No way.
The Flav Holmes cold chilling in a
wig.
Bro.
My God! Wow.
I love Public Enemy. I've seen them. I've seen NWA. I remember them chanting "fuck the police," and we're all like, everyone is like, "Fuck the police." And I remember at one point looking around and looking at the security guards, like they're kind of like nervous, like looking around. They're like, "Oh shit, is something about to happen?" We're like, "Nah, we just want to chant.
We just want to say fuck the police."
Yeah. Oh my God, that is so cool. Oh my God, I love that. Oh.
I didn't know at the time where all this was coming from. I mean, I understood, I mean,
a little bit,
yeah. But this documentary really made me understand where all of this stuff was coming from at the time,
Yeah. Kind of interesting when you think that Congress was like, we need to ban rap and hip hop.
Yep.
It's making kids violent.
Now they want to ban TikTok.
Oh, yeah. That's
oh my God.
They always go for, It's like, this is not what the problem is, guys.
Right.
Yeah, they always go for that. Or it was also metal music. They wanted to ban that. For a while, there was kind of so that one of the reasons I was also into hip hop and rap and stuff was there was sort of a crossover for a while between like metal bands and hip hop. Because a lot of the metal bands, some of them are stupid ass white supremacists, but on the other hand, some of them are like to make political statements and
Rage Against the Machine, Ice-T's band. Yeah.
There was one, what were they called? Oh, Sacred Reich. They were in Arizona, thrash metal band. And they had at the time this song called Surf Nicaragua. And so they were talking about the ridiculousness of what we were doing in Nicaragua, and why the fuck are we there? Why are we doing this? And that kind of popped into my head as well when during the documentary when they're talking
What's this band?
Nicaragua.
Ice Cold Slasher.
Ice Cold Slasher.
What did you say?
They're called Sacred Reich.
Sacred Reich. Oh,
Sacred Reich. Yeah, they were an Arizona thrash metal band. Yeah.
Okay, check them out on Spotify.
Yeah. So the song is actually pretty catchy, and almost the feel of the music is the hip hop crossover with the metal. Like some of the hip hop of the time had the same feel to the music, like some of the metal music, like some of the thrash metal music at the time. It just had this sort of pulsing, chanting kind of sound to it,
I heard Toni Morrison say once, it's the job of the artist to comment on society and how fucked up it is, essentially. And that's what these metal bands and hip hop was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, old people didn't like it.
No, they did not like it. No, they really did not. Yeah, that was like the danger.
Kids these days.
Yeah, exactly. And gosh, the more things change, the more things sound the same. Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, oh boy, this has been such a pleasure. That was a great documentary.
Yeah.
I'm really glad you picked it, Minnie. Open to suggestions for next time. Anything you guys want to shout out, plug before we go?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Well, This has been Fruitloops Video Club with Minnie, Beth, and Minnie, Wendy. And
you're like Mittens.
Who?
Mittens?
And look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there. Ronald Reagan, he should be ashamed of himself.
He should.
Taking the solar panels off the White House that Jimmy Carter put on. Just cut.
Just being a dickhead.
Make America Great Again turned into Make America a pile of doo-doo. Oh,
tell me you're racist without telling me you're racist.
Seriously, broken glass everywhere. People pissing on the street. It's like they just don't care. Can't take the smell. Can't take the noise. Got no money to move out. I guess I got no choice. His name is Samson, but I refer to him in my notes as dude. And
the dude abides.
And Ronald Reagan was like, well, how am I going to fund my bullshit? Okay, I wrote a diagram. Hang on. Side note, it didn't work. And Nancy Reagan and her stupid ass don't just say no.
Just say no.
Yeah,
I didn't know it was correct though, because
but yeah, still on my list of things to do, ladies.
White lines.
Yeah.
Blow away. Oh yeah, blow away. Yeah. Something like a phenomenon, baby.
I have so much to learn.
I learned it from watching you, Dad.
Shut the fuck up, Geraldo.
And there's nothing in that stupid vault, and I watched that for hours.
0 No stars.
Would not recommend.
Would not recommend. In retrospect.
Yeah, in retrospect.
You know what? We all learned a valuable lesson about. I'm going with that because that sounds way better. Speaking of the doctor, there was this nurse.
Oh, the nurse. I want to punch her in the face twice.
Nurse Betty. Yeah. And I hate it here. Yeah. You just need to be like Calvin.
Yeah, be like Calvin. Good job at McDonald's.
If somebody had just said, hey, would you like some help today?
But they're like, you might like crack instead. Like, I might like crack.
I might like.
How do you know?
It's okay.
And I think we've come a long way. And I think that overall is good.
Yeah.
It is good. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police.
Oh, yeah.
That's the sound of the
KRS
beast.
One. Yeah,
I had that stuck in my head for days after watching.
For whatever reason, old people didn't like it.
No, they did not like it. No, they really did not. Yeah.
Well, thank you, gals.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye. Love you guys.
Love you.
Bye.
We are gathered here today to give you permission to plan the wedding that you want.
I'm Jessica Bishop.
And I'm Sari Wienerman.
And we're the hosts of the Bouquet Toss podcast.
Today's couples have to juggle so many things, from family expectations to outdated traditions and what's currently trending.
So to make it easier, we're going deep to figure out why we do weddings the way that we do, so you can decide what to keep and what to toss from your wedding day plans.
You are cordially invited to subscribe to the Bouquet Toss wherever you get your podcasts or at evergreenpodcast.com.
By the power vested in us, we pronounce you free to plan your day your way.
Do you enjoy science, spooky stories, and all things paranormal? We do too.
While we would love for most paranormal stories to be true, we are here to tell you that they probably aren't. But that doesn't make them any less fun to speculate about.
We are the Spooky Science Sisters podcast. In this podcast, we bring you bi-weekly discussions on possible scientific explanations behind the supernatural. Backed up by research articles and other credible sources, we do deep dives into things like archaeology and physics and share in-depth discussions with topic experts.
Visit us at SpookyScienceSisters.com to listen to a couple of skeptics debunk some of your favorite alien encounters, cryptid sightings, and ghost stories with science, sass, and a significant amount of laughter.
Thank you and stay spooky.